Recession fears are taking hold of the oil markets, and money managers, oil managers are dumping oil with the fear that they're going to be caught holding a future that is not near as valuable as what they purchase it for. And so people are risking billions of dollars by holding, and they'd rather take their profits now versus later and potentially losing money, okay? And so people are confused as to what is actually happening. And I was on a conference call with about 500 people, okay? And they're all oil professionals that are in the financial side of the world, and they're scratching their head, which tells me it has nothing to do with fundamentals, and it has all to do with manipulation, okay? And so all of the news and the administration in place, everything being done, the Fed rate hikes is all to control oil prices, because oil prices have the ability to destroy trillions of dollars from the 90 plus trillion dollar stock market. Okay. And so the thing you have to understand, this is not a fundamental situation. Okay. And so when you manipulate oil prices with financial instruments, all you're doing is kicking the can down the road and reducing the amount of capital being invested in oil, setting the stage for there not being enough production. All the while demand is growing. Okay. And so there is reports talking about the demand for gasoline is dropping, which there are many people that believe it's a lie. There is a lot of things into play. And so while everyone's paying attention to the financial oil markets, they're not paying attention to the fundamentals, and they're not paying attention to the growing tensions in the Middle East. And so I have many, many reasons why I believe that in the long haul, oil prices will go up. And so let's read some news here. Right now, WTI crude is trading at $89 per barrel. Brent crude, $94.63. Okay. And so the geopolitical future of Iraq hangs in the balance. While everyone is monitoring a war in Europe, Iraq, OPEC's second largest producer, is experiencing the climax of a long-running political stalemate that will have major geopolitical ramifications. Mass protests led by influential Shiite cleric Muqtada Sadr, the premier anti-Iranian force, have taken the political situation to its breaking point. This is where Iraq's future is decided, pro or anti-Iranian. Okay, and so you have two political powers, one that is pro-Iran and one that is anti-Iran, and they're at war. Okay. And so this is very important to the stability of the Middle East, because Saudi Arabia and Iran are at war. Now, they're at war through proxy. They were at war through proxy in Syria, in Yemen, and now they are going to be at war in Iraq. And so they are attacking one another on public means, saying that Saudi Arabia is stealing billions and billions of dollars of Yemen oil and using it for their own means, okay? And so if you look here at the map, Saudi Arabia, the only thing that separates Saudi Arabia from Iran is Iraq in the Persian Gulf, okay? And so Qatar is being manipulated by Iran, and so is Iraq now. And Iran is starting to get a foothold in Iraq. And so if Iraq turns towards a pro-Iranian regime, you better bet your bottom dollar there is going to be more attacks on Saudi oil facilities, okay? And the thing you have to understand, the Houthi rebels are Iran. There's no question about it. It's been proven from an American point of view by our intelligence. It's been proven by many, many situations. And so here's the deal. Houthi rebels are bombing Saudi key oil facilities. Back in March, they did. And it's going to only get worse as the Yemen war escalates. It is getting worse. It's a bloodbath out there. It's the worst humanitarian crisis that ever existed. Okay, over 250,000 dead, and roughly 11 million people that are without resources. It's a mess out there, all because Saudi Arabia and Iran are at war for control of Yemen. Now, Saudi Arabia does not want to control Yemen, but Iran wants to control it. And Saudi is not going to allow this to happen, okay? And so the same thing happened in Yemen is about to start happening in Iraq. Two wars, and Iraq is one of the second largest contributors to OPEC, okay? And so that instability of Iraq is only going to reduce oil output, okay? In that event, it's going to be worse than what is going on in Europe right now, okay? And so Yemen's Houthis claim Saudi-backed coalition looted $13 billion in oil, okay? And so they are publicly, Iran is publicly telling the world, hey, Saudi Arabia is evil. They're stealing oil from Yemen. And so this is all a pretext for dropping even more bombs on one another, okay? And so they're attacking one another publicly and also in war, okay? And so the Sadr's protest against Iranian influence, Iraq's testing moments, okay? And so there's many, many protests happening right now in Iraq. And so they're trying to prevent Iran from controlling the country. But it's looking to me that Iran might win this political bout, which is bad news for Saudi Arabia, but it could escalate tensions and could start war. I wouldn't be surprised if Saudi Arabia sent in some proxy to start attacking the pro-Iranian regime, no different than what has happened in Syria and Yemen and other surrounding countries, because it behooves them to stop these guys, to stop Iran. U.S. oil rig count falls by the most since September. Okay, so why is U.S. rig count dropping with the fact that oil is at $90-something a barrel? Okay, the thing you have to understand, the markets are being manipulated. They're being controlled. You got the Fed rate hikes. You got the recession fears. And these recession fears, even though that oil prices are high, even though that demand growth is there, even though that we have all the fundamentals supporting oil, people are jumping ship, okay? And so the markets are being manipulated. You have Joe Biden, and you have, and Joe Biden is backed by the press, by the media, by the news. They support everything he does and everything he says, okay? And so news drives the needle. News drives oil prices, okay? And so if everybody is hearing recession, even though we have really good job reports, people are going to want to sell their positions in oil, okay? Which oil is priced in financials, not in fundamentals, okay? And so I want you guys to watch this video. I thought it was a very good video. Mr. Eric Nuttall shared this on his Twitter, and I thought it was very good.
But what was more bearish to the market was this notion that gasoline demand here in America is falling away. And we think that's a very mistaken notion based on very crooked numbers from that weekly data set.
Why do you think that those numbers aren't worth looking at?
Well, they are worth looking at because they're there, right? Mm-hmm. We look at everything that's there. But the way that they are computed leaves significant room for error. And they, for instance, this is to the facts, right? We are supposed to believe that in July, in the middle of the driving season, we're only using 8.6 million barrels a day. That would be down 500,000 barrels a day from May of this year. That would be below the COVID low of 2020. So we ask all the refiners, we ask all the retailers, we ask everybody that reported earnings this season. Every single one of them tells you that their sales are not down materially from even pre-COVID days. Some report record high sales. And if you have been around Long Island and seen those traffic jams, you'd believe that.
So you don't see the sort of demand destruction happening in the gasoline market then?
No, we don't.
You got to ask yourself, what is really going on here? How is it that these numbers aren't lining up with the truth? I mean, he just said, if you call the refineries, if you look at what is really happening, it doesn't line up what is being released, okay? And so the powers that be, in order for them to stay in power, they have to manipulate the markets. If we go into an election season and Americans are not able to provide for their family because energy prices are so high, they're going to lose their seats. They're going to lose their power, okay? And if Russia is willing to drop bombs to stay in power, if Iran is willing to drop bombs to stay in power, changing a few numbers and data doesn't compare, okay? And so their only option at this point is to manipulate the value of the dollar, is to use data that goes against the numbers. I mean, if you look at the job reports for hiring blew past estimates in July, with employers adding 528,000 jobs, more than the highest consensus call. Unemployment slipped by 3.5%, matching a 5-decade low. And we are seeing oil prices drop. It makes absolutely no sense at all. I mean, I don't know about you, but my driving has not reduced. In fact, my driving has increased. Everybody that I know, they're not driving any less. So what is really going on here? Their only option is to manipulate oil prices, okay? And it's working. But all they're doing is kicking the can down the road, reducing the amount of investment in oil. I mean, I've got a lot of oil and gas deals, and I'm getting a lot of phone calls from my partners say, hey, Sean, are we going to be able to get permits on this lease? They're really worried about a program that we need to drill in New York, and everybody's concerned. I'm getting emails, I'm getting texts, I'm getting phone calls. Hey, are we going to have any issues getting these drilling permits? I mean, we're on private land, has nothing to do with what the Biden administration is doing, and all of that had mostly to do with federal lands that were in overseas, okay? And then they've had a lot of pushback, and then they stopped playing these games, okay? But that concern prevents investment dollar. The concern that there's a recession reduces the amount of investment in oil. The focus on green technology and the reduction of emissions and all of the market manipulators and all the controls, the green tech controls or the Green New Deal, everything that we're being manipulated into believing that oil is not important. We're being manipulated into oil is a bad investment. We're being manipulated into believing that oil is destroying the world. All this is doing is reducing the amount of oil activity, the amount of investing, the amount of drilling, which is why the Baker Hughes rig count is dropping. Okay, now I wanted to read this tweet from President Biden. Putin is still waging his war in Ukraine, putting pressure on global oil supply, and families can feel it. Okay, don't you feel the warm fuzzy from Biden really caring about American families? But we stepped up to release 1 million barrels of oil a day from our reserve and rallied our global partners to release from theirs. Now, prices are on record decline. I mean, you see how he uses words, but the truth is that he has tapped into his oil savings account, and he's causing other countries to do the same. And by doing that, we're reducing our strategic reserves, and it's reducing the amount of money we invest in new drilling. And all we're doing is kicking the can down the road and setting the stage for a worse situation. Instead of releasing 1 million barrels a day from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, we should drill for more oil. Because all we're doing, I mean, that's no different than me going to my family, hey guys, great news, okay? We don't have enough money, but we're going to start tapping into our savings. And by some miracle, there's going to be more money next year. I'm not going to send out my resume. I'm not going to work any harder. I'm going to make the same amount of money. In fact, the amount of money I'm making is actually going to drop 30% each year. but not to worry. There's food on the table. In fact, there's more food on the table now than there was yesterday because I'm tapping into my savings. Isn't that great news, guys? In fact, I'm going to get all my neighbors to do the same thing I'm doing. Isn't that a good idea? I mean, it's unbelievable. And I can't believe he uses that as a plus, okay? Now, if you look at U.S. oil production from 1985 until 2022, January 2022, we went from producing 8 million barrels a day in 85, and we hit a high of 13.1 million February 2020, okay? And so the thing that you have to understand, all of this oil was conventional, all right? Now, conventional oil has a much slower decline. We didn't start producing shale oil until 2012, called the Shale Revolution. That's why we skyrocketed from 5.8 million barrels a day and hit a high of 13.2.1 million barrels a day. Now, the reason I'm going to explain to you why this chart is so important. Do you see the slow natural decline here? Okay. Then you see the spike in oil production. This spike is only because of shale, okay? Now, here's what you need to understand. Oil prices dropped because we went from 5-something million barrels a day and we went up to 13.1 million barrels a day. That's why oil prices came down. Today, we're producing 11.5 million barrels a day, but oil prices are not dropping because we're increasing oil output. Oil prices are dropping because we're manipulating the oil markets, and we're tapping into our oil savings account called the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Now, here's something else you need to understand. This figure right here shows the decline of shale, okay? Now, when I say decline of shale, what I mean is when a well starts producing, it declines. If it comes online at 1,000 barrels a day, it's going to decline to a lower level over the years, okay? Every oil well does, okay? But shale decline is much faster, okay? So this is on the EIA website, Energy Information Administration, okay? And so day one, they're showing an average shale well. And so if that well comes online around 850 barrels a day, in the first 12 months, it's going to drop down to half. And in 24 months, it's going to drop like 90%. And by month 48, it's going to drop close to the low tens, okay? Now, that's a massive decline, okay? This is a chart comparing conventional decline to shale decline, okay? So conventional wells, this is the decline. It's a natural, smooth decline. As where Bakken, it's a very fast decline, and then it starts to slow down. And so conventional average 6% decline per year. And Bakken, initial production. So if we compare a conventional well at 1,000 barrels a day and a shale well at 1,000 barrels a day, in 10 years, the conventional well will produce 2.7 million barrels of oil, as where a shale well will produce 0.9 million barrels of oil. Now, so it shows you that the decline for shale is much faster. In addition, a conventional well can produce more oil in a lesser amount of time, as where shale is the most expensive barrel of oil to produce. A shale well will cost you $10 to $20 million, as well as where a conventional well might cost you $250,000. There's a massive difference there, okay? Now, you look at this decline, okay? And then you look at this decline. It goes in line with conventional, okay? Now, this is all conventional oil. From the 80s until 2012, most of that is conventional. But with shale, all you see is a massive incline. Shale tapped into an enormous amount of financing, enormous amount of debt to finance this, okay? But the reason why we don't see a massive decline is because they were dumping billions and billions of dollars in new shale developments. Now, they are not spending, I mean, you saw Baker Hughes' report. They're reducing the amount of rigs, which means they're not as active. They're not drilling as much oil as they did. Back in 2008, when oil was over $100 a barrel, they were drilling it like crazy. In 2012, same thing. But today, you don't see that massive increase. Why? Because shale oil knows the truth. They are losing money. The banks have lost their butts. They're not financing oil like they used to. And the money managers in oil are selling off like crazy. The markets are being manipulated. And so shale doesn't have the money that they need to properly develop. Now, if you look at this decline, it's a nice, slow, natural decline in conventional because they were losing. They didn't have enough good places to develop. And so that's why they had to go overseas and go offshore because there wasn't enough places to develop. And shale, that's why they unlocked the door to shale. Okay. So if you look at this natural slow decline, shale hasn't been around but for only 10 years. I mean, it's in the diaper stage. We have yet to see the decline. We haven't seen that decline yet. You get ready for a massive shale decline because if we see this kind of decline from 8.9 million barrels a day down to 5 million barrels a day, what do you think is going to happen to shale? If shale had the same decline curve as conventional, the way it was in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000, we'd be producing about 20 million barrels a day. But today, we're producing about 11.5 million barrels a day. Now, here's a great, by Hart Energy, they put together this amazing table that they spent a tremendous amount of time doing research to put this thing together, okay? So these are all the basins, the Bakken, Alaska North Slope, Central Basin Platform, Delaware, Eagle Ford, all these different formations throughout the U.S., okay? And they're showing the annual decline here, okay? Now, this is a lower decline here because there's a lot of conventional oil in the Alaska North Slope, okay? So annual decline on average for all of these basins in the U.S. averages about 34%, okay? So on average, here we go, 34%, all right? So on average, across the board, we're losing 34% a year of production from U.S. production. So if we don't drill for oil, we're going to lose a lot of oil. And so let's read this article here. In our analysis, the first year declines of the unconventional plays are in the 40 to 50% range. Unconventional means shale, okay? While the others average around 15%. So shale averages 40 to 50% decline as where conventional averages about 15%. In our analysis, the total U.S. oil-based production decline is 34%, which would result in a 4.2 million barrel a day reduction after 1 year in absence of additional drilling, okay? In other words, and so if we look at the numbers right here, so we're currently producing 11.5 million barrels a day. If we lost 4.5 million, that would put us at about 8 million barrel a day. That would put us at about 7 million barrels a day production, okay? If that happened, we'd be going back to the days of 2013, okay? So we have to drill like crazy just to maintain our current oil production, okay? Now, if you look at gas, same problem. The estimated base decline of natural gas is 28%, implies that the U.S. production would be 31 billion cubic feet of gas lower after a year of additional drilling occurred. The base U.S. production decline rates for oil and gas are significant and would result in meaningful reduction in production rates if drilling were completely halted, okay? So here's the thing you have to understand. Everybody's putting their faith in shale. But if our decline rates were like Saudi Arabia and Russia, because they have more conventional, we'd be producing about 20 million barrels a day with a 6% decline, and we wouldn't have to drill for years. Oil would be $30 a barrel. But the reason why we're in this situation is because we are taking a last-ditch effort for energy. And so because of this massive amount of oil that we found from the source rock shale, we reduced our dependence on Saudi Arabia. We told them to take a hike, and we pulled our military out, all the while it's creating a vacuum. Now Iran is becoming more provocative. They are beefing up their battle in Yemen, and they're going to start a battle in Iraq. It's like the days of Saddam Hussein. I'm telling you right now, the geopolitical risk has heightened tremendously, and nobody's talking about it. They're only talking about recession fears and green technology and the reduction of gas demand. All the while, demand is growing. Fundamentally, demand is growing. Okay? And so the rig count's dropping. The faith in oil is dropping. The investment in oil is dropping. And Joe Biden continues to tell the world, hey, listen, gas prices are dropping, energy prices are dropping. But the thing that you have to understand, coming into hurricane season, oil prices always go up during that time. The election is for Xi Jinping in China is going to result in him ending COVID restrictions. You've got the oil embargo in Europe is going to take place probably come January, starting December. And you got the SPR releases coming to an end, okay? And so in addition, demand numbers are going to continue to grow, even if they are reduced. I mean, in 2008, 2009, the last major financial crisis, we went from $140 a barrel down to $44 a barrel because we lost 1 million barrels a day, okay? Now, in the event that we do reduce 1 million barrel a day demand, just like in 2008, Europe is going to more than make up the difference because they're transferring from natural gas to heat their homes to crude oil because they're cutting off Russian oil, okay? And so with the Middle East tensions escalating, with the fact that we're kicking the can down the road, we should be focusing on the developing of oil and gas because we've pulled military out of the Middle East. It's causing a vacuum out there because of what has happened in Afghanistan. People are becoming more provocative. That's why China is acting up against Taiwan, making threats against Nancy Pelosi. Russia's dropping bombs in Europe. Iran is becoming more provocative with their drones, dropping bombs on Israel, dropping bombs in Saudi Arabia, dropping bombs in Yemen, Syria, and Iraq is next. Guys, listen, I have no doubt that oil prices will remain strong even in an inflation. Right now, we're seeing market manipulations, but mark my words, this is not going to last. If oil prices have to drop even more, I mean, because think about it, we're setting up the world to invest less in oil. The lower oil prices go, the more production destruction. Everybody's talking about demand destruction, but I don't hear anybody talking about production destruction. That's what we're seeing. That's what we're happening. We're playing in the hands of Russia. Saudi Arabia is a sitting duck. They might have more oil, but what are they going to do if they're surrounded by Iran? And Russia and Iran are aligned. They are aligned, and it's only a matter of time until Russia shows their true face right now, because right now the only reason why Saudi Arabia and Russia are working together is because it was to dig them out of the hole because we lost 10 million barrels a day. OPEC Plus dug us out of a 10 million barrel a day demand drop all the way from $30 a barrel, and we climbed back to $130-something a barrel, all because Russia and Saudi Arabia came together and started working together. And so at what point does Russia stop working with Saudi Arabia? At what point does Russia pull out of OPEC? It's only a matter of time. It's only going to increase the volatility of oil. So, all right, guys, I'm Sean Pruitt, president of Kingdom Exploration. If you like this channel, please subscribe, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.